so much. All right. Well, it's good to see you all. And I'm so glad to be here tonight. And I am going to share my screen. So here we go. So let me tell you what I did. What I did not do was go back and watch the recording from last week, because I think I told you that this is not my favorite way to present Invite, Welcome, Connect. I much prefer to be in a room full of folks. And so I talk about relational ministry all the time. And so it's really hard to have a relationship with that little green dot right there at the top of my screen. And I just hope and pray that you got something out of last week. I tried to give an overview of this ministry, and we had an advisory board meeting today, and man, we're just, we're reimagining and re-energizing this ministry as we speak. But let me show you what I did. I got on everybody's, let's see, here we go. I tried to get on as many folks' websites and their Facebook pages as I could find, and some Facebook pages, some websites. And here is just a small portion of some of the things that I found and picked from you all. I wasn't going through these just to, see how, because I'm going to be talking about websites and how we welcome people digitally tonight. But I certainly wasn't going through doing with a checklist of you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, because there is no right or wrong in this work. It's you do the best that you can do with what you have. And but I loved it. I loved looking at all the different ways that you all are finding ways to continue to invite and welcome and connect folks in ministry, even now during these tough times that we're in. I'm going to move, and I may swing back to this from time to time to point out a few things, but I hope you saw maybe yourself or your community in some of these pictures that I took. So what I'm going to do tonight is sort of do as much of a deep dive as I can in a short amount of time. I talked about evangelism last week and in the Invite Essential, about inviting people into a relationship with you and others in your congregation. But it's about inviting them into a relationship with God through Jesus. And these are the high-level questions pre-pandemic. And remember when I told you last week that the essence of the book, the essence of this ministry is still valid, even though we're in this kind of weird world of pandemic right now. The essentials are still the same. And so these are on the website. They're under high-level assessments. And so I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go back and look at these questions, because they're still valid and they will continue to be valid as we move into the fall and as churches begin slowly opening back up, and some offering still hybrid worship and opening back up. These are the things that you're going to want to continue looking at, how your church and your congregation and your context answers these questions. And if you remember, I said to you last week that when I created Invite, Welcome, Connect, I deliberately created it for little small congregations and large congregations. So these are real good questions that you can go back and ask your leadership and ask each other. And these are sort of high level, separate from the checklists that Gar sent to you today that are also on the website. Look at there, Gar, I just froze up. Let's see. I told him this happened last week, and now it's happening again. So let me figure this out. Here we go. Digital invite. Okay. This came to me from the Adventist Church, Seventh-day Adventist, maybe. And I just want to look at it. I want you to look at it because it's really pretty interesting. It says, the digital model of evangelism is a model for everyday ministry to real people demonstrated through the life of Jesus Christ. And it's a means to use social influence for kingdom building. So what did Jesus do during his 3.5 years of ministry? He shared stories He shared godly wisdom. He attended to people's needs, physically and spiritually. He answered people's questions regarding spiritual matters and everyday challenges. He gave people hope. He gave people community. He developed an engaged, active church body. He led people to wholeness, and he equipped people to be disciples and replicate the model that he developed. You know what? I'm going to have to figure out what is going on with my, why it gets stuck. So why digital invite evangelism? There are about 7 billion people on the planet. 4 billion of them use the internet. Pretty amazing statistics. 3 billion are on social media, and the average number of social media accounts per person is 8.6. And I really, you know, I don't know if I said this last week, but way back, way before the pandemic, I was talking about social media and using social media as a tool for evangelism in our churches. And, you know, I urged, especially clergy, you know, you don't have to be on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, yourself, but your church certainly needs to be. The global internet population growth is just huge. This is as of a year ago, and I don't have the current statistics. The internet reaches 59% of the world's population, represents 4.57 billion people, a 6% increase since 2019. And these are some statistics about in an internet minute. How many uploads, how many YouTube hours, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. It's just pretty amazing, these statistics are. And so we look at the different tools for digital invite and digital evangelism. And I know that Gar said that you all hosted Jerusalem Greer, who is great, who is a staff officer for Bishop Curry's office, working with Stephanie Spellers. And I know that I watched some of her material, and it's wonderful. And I know you have access to that. You can go back and see her material. So some of the stuff you see, I'm going to show you tonight, was pulled together by our Catherine Pryor Miller, who's on my advisory board, who handles all the social media for Invite, Welcome, Connect, and she does our website. So these are really ideas that Catherine came up with that I wanted to pass along to you tonight. This first one is, you know, we have this, well, let me go back here. To just say a few more things about this. We have this unique challenge right now, and it's been this way for the last year. So I know that we've all, you know, punted and pivoted to doing things digitally. But what, you know, when we really continue to think about this whole digital invite piece, what is it we're inviting them to? You know, what does it mean to be part of our community? And I want to say that I think Jerusalem said this to you all too, you know, give yourself grace. This last year has been really wild and crazy for all of us. And you know, what you're doing really is enough. You've got to really focus on your own congregation and the context that your congregation is in. You know, how can you equip the members of your church to invite people? And so that's when I was supposed to segue to this list, this digital invite. And these are just a few ideas. I'm sure there are more out there, but here are a few that if you are not doing any of these are some things you could think about right now during the pandemic that we're in. And the first one is host a virtual watch party. And a lot of people are doing that already. And share a link. And I see this all the time because I get notices on my phone that, you know, one of my friends is hosting a watch party and inviting me to it, which is great. And then just inviting friends to a virtual small group. And I'm sure that you all are doing that as well. There are a lot, and I found many of them on your websites as I was kind of going through checking your websites and your Facebook pages. And a lot of you are doing Zoom Bible studies and all sorts of virtual Bible studies. And so people are rarely offended when they're invited to something. And, you know, it's just keeping people connected even during this time. And I know people are really tired of Zoom right now, but it's still one of the best ways that we can connect in small groups virtually, especially until we all have our vaccines and we can all get back together in person. And then your church. These are just some ideas that my team came up with. Hire and recruit creatives. And I'm sure that they've kind of risen to the surface, at least in, even on my advisory board. A couple of my advisory team are doing things now creatively for this ministry that I had no idea that they were even interested in that sort of stuff. And so when it comes to design work, you're blessed if you can have somebody in your parish or in your church who will help you with kind of design and working on your website. There are all sorts of digital trainings online, and you've probably found a lot of those. There's a lot of free materials out there right now for different video and audio editing and that sort of thing that are available. Invest in the right equipment. The churches that can afford to get a little bit better equipment, it's really, I think, important if we can do that, even on a small scale from what you're doing right now. And the reason for that is that as we move back, and I said this last week, as we move back into hopefully worshiping in person, our churches are still going to be very interested in having access to digital worship services and YouTube and Zoom and various and sundry ways to worship and through the internet. So record video stories. We, in all the years that I've been doing Invite, Welcome, Connect, I would literally go around the country, and when I was at a presentation or whatever, I would go up to someone and ask them if they would share their story with me, and I would take my iPhone and I would videotape it, and then I use those videos in many, many, many of my presentations through the years. And so, and what I would say to you about this is it's so simple to do. It's easy, and it doesn't really cost anything to record video stories. And so people love stories, and people can share their story and their testimonies, and you can put those on your website and share them on any of your church's platforms, whether it be through social media or your website. And then have an e-newsletter. This is something fairly new that we're even doing with Invite, Welcome, Connect. We are actually getting ready to send out the second newsletter. And I don't just automatically assume that because you've been part of this Diocese of Kansas event that you want to be on our mailing list. But if you have not already gotten on our website, there's a pop-up that lets you put in your email address so that you can get our e-newsletter and any information that comes out. Social media ads is something that a lot of people are familiar with. There's information about this on the Invite, Welcome, Connect website. There's different stories that we tell about ways that you can pay a little bit of money on Facebook or our various social media ways to kind of get the word out. It's the next one is create Facebook events. And this is another one of those things that, when you've got something coming up where you want to really invite people in the area, there's a way to do that on Facebook to really nail down people that are closer into your community. And then launch a YouTube channel, and a lot of you have done that as well. It's something that we haven't really done with Invite, Welcome, Connect yet. We're using Vimeo still, but the more I talk to people, the more they say that, YouTube probably is a better way to go at this point in the game. And so it's something that we are even thinking about doing, and just, be creative and know what kind of content that you feel like your audience wants and needs, and create videos for those. You don't need a lot of expensive equipment to do this either. As I said, you can just do it with your phone. And then create infographics. That's a creative way to share detailed information. Catherine, who I mentioned earlier, uses something called Canva. And she feels like it's very, it's a small scale, canva.com, and it's a small scale project oriented. And she said it was really, really easy for her to learn how to use Canva. And so a lot of the slides that you see tonight, like the ones on digital evangelism and the one for Invite, Welcome, and Connect, Catherine created those on Canva. And, you know, I want to say, because I think I may have said this last week when I talked about the Invite Essential, personal invitation is still the most effective way that we can invite people to be a part of our community of faith. And I love this. I pulled this off of St. Thomas the Apostle's website, and then put this down here because, you know, it's still all about having the courage. Remember when I said, and I'm going to hit on that again in just a minute, having the deep truth of Invite is courage versus fear. And you know what? I think it's probably a lot easier nowadays to just invite someone to a watch party, invite someone to watch, to be a part of your service digitally. And, you know, time will tell whether or not this time of the pandemic and us, you know, the threshold, I think Gar said that earlier, you know, the threshold is really different. And I don't know, we'll let him speak to that now than it was in the past when people had to walk through the doors of our churches. Now they can come into our communities virtually and digitally. One story I want to tell you right quick. I have a friend, a cousin who lives over in Lafayette, Louisiana, and she grew up Southern Baptist like I did, and she still doesn't attend a Baptist church too much anymore, but she got into a Bible study with a group of Catholic women. And then one of them mentioned to her that about this church, this Episcopal church in Lafayette, and they knew that I was Episcopalian. Anyway, long story, she gets online and looks at this church website in Lafayette, and she literally decided that she wants to visit there when they open back up for in-person worship, you know, and she got online and did a book study with them. And it was strictly through her just being invited by her Catholic friends to look at this Episcopal church. And I just thought that was a real interesting story. I should have taken pictures of it. This book is not in my resources yet, but it will be. It's a great little book on what is evangelism by Patricia Lyons. And Patricia is with Virginia Theological Seminary. And if you look at Patricia's Facebook pages, she talks about this book, and she talks about stories. And what I love about her work is that she'll give this story about going in, like this one on the left, post-surgery, where she visited with a nurse and just started talking about the nurse. We talked to the nurse, and then they had all these things in common. And then on the other story, she goes to this RV campground after her surgery. She's healing, and she's, you know, I love how she calls it everyday evangelism, because it really is relational evangelism and just talking to people about their faith and asking them questions about their faith. So then we come to Welcome, and it's the Ministry of Hospitality. And these are the high-level questions that are on the website that go back pre-pandemic for the Ministry of Hospitality, the Ministry of Welcome. And these are just real high level, as you can see. One of the questions that I ask a lot is, would you say your congregation is a friendly community, or is it a community of friends? And when I talk about this particular question, when I'm doing this work, I say you can answer this question when you're back in-person worship, and you're in fellowship, or you're in coffee hour, whatever, you know, do you take the time to go and visit and talk to the person that you don't know, the stranger in the room? So it's a good question to ask yourself. Then the digital checklist that Gar sent out today to you, and I'm going to just go through this quickly with you, and then you'll have it when we do a breakout into our small groups. Because what we had to do with Invite, Welcome, Connect, In the Invite Essential, we talk about community. We talk about, how do you help people share their story of faith? You talk about community. Who are you in the community? And then we've always moved with the Invite Essential into communication. And how do you communicate with people in your congregation and outside your congregation? What does your website look like? And this is when I would always talk about social media. And it was at that big communication piece of the Invite Essential. But when a year ago, everything shut down and we had to move into a digital space, we came up with this digital welcome during a pandemic checklist. And I was telling Gar before we got started, one of the things that my advisory board are doing, or helping me do, is we're taking now over the next couple of months, we're taking the old checklist and the old resources that we've had through the years, and then we're going to blend them as our churches become, are hybrid and moving back into in-person worship, because we know that, as I said before, that churches are going to still continue to want to offer something for their members virtually or digitally. And so these are some questions that I want you to consider tonight as we're going into the breakout rooms. And he emailed these to you, but I want you to think about these as we go through them. It's really critical right now that we think of our websites as our church home. And that's why we've moved this over sort of into welcome for a little while. So we're not welcoming people in person so much as we're welcoming them into this sort of, this digital space. And as I said, it's really here to stay, I believe. And it's never been more important right now that our digital spaces reflect God's love. Bishop Curry has said it so many times: if it's not about love, it's not about God. If it's not about love, it's not about God, period. And so these questions that I want you to consider are simple. Is it engaging? Is it welcoming? Is there some sort of digital church link on the homepage? Do you have any way to connect the people that are visiting your page? Is there a place for newcomers to request a pastoral follow-up? Your homepage, I'm going to get into that a little bit more. Testimonials, subscribe to our mailing list, and then you've got social media and different questions about social media. You've got signage, banners, and then there's more questions as you identify even, your welcome team members, and I'm going to speak to that in a little bit. And then getting into, clergy welcome, newcomer welcome gift. And so this is sort of a blend already of our old welcome checklist. And then these are some of the new things that we've added into the welcome checklist already. And so, as I said, Gar sent those to you. And then what I want, and I'm going to be giving you instructions about the breakout room in just a few minutes. So I talk about, St. Benedict says all guests who present themselves are to be welcomed as Christ. The deep truth of welcome is seeing the other. And so I want you to really think about this as you visit with the folks from your church. Is seeing the other really reflected on your website? The question, it needs to be really mirrored on your website. And then I want you to think about the core values of Invite, Welcome, Connect. I mentioned them last week, and I sort of went into them a little bit last week. So when you're looking at your homepage, I want you to be thinking about these core values. We pray that our hearts reflects God's gracious invitation and welcome. So are we doing a good job mirroring God's welcome table on our website? Take a good hard look. Do you have more pictures of stained glass windows than people? Who is your website appealing to? The next one is intentional. And in all our actions and reactions, are we reflections of Christ? Living into our baptismal covenant. Do you have a link on your homepage that directs you to your church online worship experience? Do you have a welcome message? and links to a connect form. And the relational, critical to the work of Invite What Will Connect, is the relational core value. And ultimately, it's all about relationships. You know, does your site look alive, or is it just strictly words? And then accountable. We're accountable to God and to the gospel, to each other. And we have to really think outside the box as we're, you know, looking at our homepage. These are some of the questions, just a few of the questions that people might ask when they're looking for a church. Can I find God here? Can I serve God here? Do people want to know me? You know, is there real authentic outreach? Is there a way to really plug in to connect with this church? Do people like each other here? And then here are some considerations for your homepage, and these may reflect what Jerusalem gave you when y'all hosted Jerusalem Greer. These are some that Catherine came up with for our homepage. And she also does the homepage for her church, Ascension in Dallas. And these are just some of her suggestions. You know, pictures. It's a great, if you have pictures of people, worship, outreach, as little text as possible, and then, you know, linking to more pictures or a photo gallery. And then a one-stop link to maybe worship at home. And that is that link to how whatever sort of worship that you're offering, whether it be through Zoom or YouTube or videos, or however you're offering worshiping at home. New here that there's some sort of link that takes you to either a welcome message from your clergy or a connect card. And then she's got taglines mirroring your core values and linked to your core values and beliefs if you've done that work. Number 5 is video samples of your worship and sermons and happenings, because as you are well aware, a lot of times on Sunday morning, people may not be able to attend your worship service, but you know, you want to be able to be sure that they can do so when they can. And the calendar, and the interesting thing about the calendar is that, you know, the hardest thing in the world for people like me to do is kind of when I'm looking at people's websites and I go to the calendar and it's 2 years old or whatever, and that's not good. Need assistance link. Now, this is one that you know, Catherine had to unpack this for me. They put a need assistance link on their website so that the people that are just out there looking for help have a way to go, and it takes them to the different things that they're offering, like for their homebound and different food outreach ministries that they have. And then testimonials is another thing that's really important. And I mentioned that one already, that, you know, it's great to have sort of video testimonials from people in your church. These are some digital Usher ideas. And, you know, it's one of the things she says, that you've just got to make sure your online etiquette goes beyond Sunday morning. A lot of people are doing daily office online and compline online and morning prayer. And, you know, are you welcoming people that are joining you? Are you being really intentional about that? And then she has that online greeters are identifiable and just welcoming people, inviting people, and then linking with connect with us forms. You've got some way to download your bulletin that's posted. You have a hospitality, whether it's in your chat, in your YouTube, or comments on Facebook, or if you're doing a Zoom, you know, you can use the chat function, and that you have designated greeters. And then the words of welcome is part of the you know, that's what we've always done with in-person worship. And I think it's important also that we're doing that digitally as well. And then that you have some sort of way to invite guests to join in. And then you have readily accessible clergy contact info on your website. And that's sort of a given, I think. This is a digital Usher greeting at Christ Church Cathedral, and I don't know if you can see it. And so there's all sorts of ways to do this, and I think it just totally depends on how you're doing your particular worship service that you're in your context. And then this is Ascension. Ascension has they put a warm welcome in there when they're doing any of their online services. And then they always put in some sort of way to connect to their Connect form, which gives a way for visitors to connect in and give information to the church. And I know that Gar can speak to this, and I would like for him to speak to this in just a few minutes. Or actually, we can do it right now because we're going to stop before we go any further. Gar, would you be willing to share with the group how many churches or how many folks or how many families have come to St. Thomas the Apostle digitally? And I believe you said have really become members digitally. Can you speak to that?
I think so. Jean's on here, who's the person that tracks that. She looked at it last week. We have about 20 people, probably around 10 to 11 households that have found us in the last year, and it's all been through our digital expressions, which is kind of interesting and a challenge. Most of them have not met anybody from St. Thomas other than a handful of staff, and of course the names that they see online if they're watching on Facebook or other places like that. But it's been really, I think it's been eye-opening to us how much people are looking for church and finding us, and every single one of them found us through our website or through Facebook, and then have been watching our services and participating that way. A couple of them have already become super involved, and like we had one person come in, her name is Lisa, and her and her husband were looking for a church. They just moved here from Atlanta, and they hadn't really connected with anybody, and they were really just desperate for community, and so they found some ways to connect and have been helping at the church. And I can't stress enough that, I mean, you just don't know who's watching sometimes and how people are finding you. And so those sort of place markers in different avenues allow people to find you, because some people will look on Facebook. Some people are going to look on, through Google. Some people are going to find your YouTube channel, just all kinds of different ways. And so even just having some simple stuff up, it doesn't have to be super elaborate. It doesn't have to look like a Hollywood production. It just needs to be something, and that's enough for people. So so we've had quite a few. I don't know, Jean, if you're on here, if you're willing to say.
Yeah, I am. We're probably right about the numbers that you talked about, and I mean that's how people are finding us is through the internet, obviously, by the Google or Facebook, most of them. And we touch base with them after we get their information, and boy, they are just pleased as punch to get a phone call or an email or text, something from us personally. And it's definitely worthwhile. And like Ara said, we've had some people get very involved, and some people are just kind of dipping their toe in because they're a little scared to get involved yet. And obviously we're not really fully open yet, but some people are just really ready to be involved just by joining our community, and they haven't really met other people. We did do a Zoom newcomer meeting, probably I think it was November, I want to say, and we had 6 or 7 people come to that. It's not quite the same as an in-person welcome, but at least then those people could see who some of the other newer faces are.
Thank you for mentioning that. And and here's the thing. The old-fashioned way of connecting, I'm going to talk about connect when we come back from the breakout. But I used to recommend, I would recommend for a long time, I recommend calling a person if they gave you their phone number, if they visited your church, to call them. And then I got that one shot down by one of my young clergy, Jimmy Abbott. He was in his late 20s, and he says, Mary, because that was a non-negotiable for a while. If a visitor gave you their phone number for you to call them, and he said, Mary, if they're my age, I'm not going to call them. He said, because I don't want to be called myself. Anyway, so I said what he would do is either email them or text them. But I think what has happened during the pandemic is if you can get their home address, people, it's such an old-fashioned thing, but getting a handwritten note in the mail, or a handwritten letter, a handwritten card is really effective. So
we had visitors, Mary, at Christmas Eve we were doing parking lot services, this sort of weird thing where you have a radio transmitter, $100 piece of equipment. And we were all in our parking lot, and this family of 7 found us. And then we baptized 3 of their kids a couple of weeks ago. Wow. And they were just looking for a church, and they are starting to get involved. Like Jean said, they're just sort of on the edge, but it was just, I mean, they just came to Christmas Eve and found our stuff on our website and pulled up and had a great time. And it was just kind of interesting. So you just don't know how people are going to find you.
Yeah. So before we go into breakout rooms too, I noticed Gar has sent me a list of all the congregations and, communities of faith that had joined this workshop. And 2 of them were campus ministries. And if they're on tonight, they may be watching the ball games, the basketball game. But these campus ministries, it's been one of my visions for Invite, Welcome, Connect to take Invite, Welcome, Connect to the Episcopal student centers around the country. Of course, when I moved to Sewanee, Sewanee is an Episcopal university, and they don't really even have an Episcopal student center. But Ruth Cobb, wife of one of the implemented, we did a workshop with the undergraduate students there at the University of the South. And then they implemented Invite, Welcome, Connect there at All Saints Chapel on the university campus. And so we are looking at maybe, right now we don't have a definitive checklist just for campus ministries, but it's something that we're looking at going into the future. So what we're going to do now is Gar is going to put you all into your breakout groups. And what I want you to do is look at the things that he emailed you, whether it's the invite regular checklist, or the welcome regular checklist, or the digital ideas and the digital welcome checklist that I just went over. He emailed every bit of that to you all. And in your breakout rooms, I want you to kind of go through these and share with what you're doing, maybe what ideas that you're not doing that you'd like to do. And then we'll come back. I don't know, Gar, we have to think about how long we're going to let them stay in these groups. Because they're looking at both invite and welcome.
How long do you think? 20 minutes?
Probably 20 minutes. And then we'll just bring y'all back in.
Okay. Okay, so you guys are in groups. I tried to put you with your parish. Some of the parishes have more than we need for just a small group. So there's a couple of different breakouts there. If I couldn't put you in your parish, I tried to put you either in folks that are close by or in your minster. So I did the best I could. Some of you may end up in a room and you may look around, not know anybody. Just send me a message and I can move you to a different room, because I may have gotten some information wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. You're going to get a message on your screen that says to accept the invitation to go to your room, and then you'll head out that way. And then when it's time to close, I'll give you some warning messages and bring you back. So you should have an invitation, so go ahead and accept the invitations. You'll head on out to your rooms.
Might have been too long for y'all.
I thought it was, but it was not. We were still talking.
Okay.
So that was a good call.
I'm going to talk about Connect a little bit, and then we're going to send you back in your groups just for a few minutes, maybe 5, 10 minutes, just to answer a couple of questions. Okay. So I just want you to be thinking about belonging at this point, and I am going to share my screen. Here we go. There we go. The ministry of belonging is Connect. So seeing ourselves in our communities of faith is essential, and how we want to stay connected, seeing ourselves is really important. Jesus knows our human need for community. He called his disciples into community, and we can't walk with Jesus unless there are others around us who will help us in our struggles and help lift us up. So what we want to think about is, how can our community of faith help me connect and find a relationship with Jesus? How can this community of faith feed a lifelong relationship with God and one another? So what we do with the Connect Essential is we give folks an opportunity to serve, an opportunity to be part of our ministry efforts at our churches. You know, what we can do right now, as we're already doing, is people doing readings from home and doing morning prayer and Compline and opening up opportunities for people to really connect and share their gifts. And the pandemic has given us a kind of a unique way to do that. Small groups, you know, when we break out into small groups, Zoom groups, and people are in groups that they normally wouldn't sit in a coffee hour, you know, they're having conversations that they wouldn't normally have had. And that's some of the feedback I've gotten over the last year, is people that have really didn't believe that they would be able to have intimate relationships with people through Zoom, but they've been able to do that in many ways. And so it's hard, but in some small groups really don't gel well. So we have to really make certain that we welcome people and be authentic with people in our small groups, making sure that we acknowledge every single person who's in the group, you know, welcome each person, hear their names. And I hope you, if you were on with me last week, when you had a chance to use those questions that I offered for the getting to know the newcomers that I've been using for a long time, my Connect questions. I encourage you to go back and I have a slide about that in just a minute. So successful invite, welcome, connect communities will really open us up to this sense of belonging with Jesus, you know, as well as the wider community. These are those intentional questions that are on our website under the Connect resources that are online. And here are those questions. If you want to use these are great questions to use when you're getting to know people in your congregation, and even getting to know, you know, getting to know the newcomers that you have. And then I have some deeper questions for you if you're interested in those. You know, have you ever really felt God's call in your life? Do you feel called to a particular ministry right now? And I think it was Gar that said, you know, what does normal look like when we go back into normal? It's going to be sort of the new normal. It's going to be very different. And it may be that you feel called, and people feel called to different ministries as they come back to church and begin coming back to in-person worship. That they've had this almost year of the pandemic of really discerning how God can use the gifts and the talents that they have, maybe in a different new way than they've done before. You know, so what do you love doing? What gives you life? What gives you joy? You know, what makes your heart sing? Two of the resources that are on the website under Connect, they're under the toolkit. So there's several places on the website that says toolkit. And I have to just click on those links. And the toolkit, each one of the links on the toolkit, each one of the ideas takes you to something else. So two of those things have to do with sharing our story and listening. One of them is the Beloved Community Story Sharing Guidebook. And this is a rich, rich resource that came out of the Episcopal Church, out of Bishop Curry's work and Stephanie Speller's work. And it's really great. And that whole resource is on our website. The other one is from On Being by Krista Tippett. She's great. She has this Better Conversations. There's a whole really wonderful resource that she offers. And it's about listening skills. It's about sharing our story with each other, because those things are really critical to this ministry. You know, the deep truth of Connect is the sacred act of listening. And so it's very, very important that our congregations really develop rich listening skills, resources, and these are two of them. So we're going to go back into our small groups. Maybe let's just make it 5 minutes. You're just going to go.
And Kari's back.
I am.
Yeah, Kari, thank you for sharing your story last week. That was great.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me.
Yeah, it's great.
We were actually just talking about one way to accept people or to encourage accepting people into the community is being open in discussion about how they practice their spiritual practices, because so many people I know have shied away because they felt like I have to do it this way. And we talked about just being accepting on where they're at and their religious beliefs or spiritual practices, and that being one good way. So
yeah, you know, one of my things is I love labyrinth. I love walking, and I was sharing that story when I took to Calgary, Canada. So I was in the Anglican Diocese of Calgary, and when I finished, this priest comes up to me, and he's an elderly man, and he just kind of finger in my face and said that was a demonic thing and blah 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 blah. You know, he was just.
Mary, you got muted somehow.
What? So
Yeah.
stop me. Did you mute me on purpose when I was doing this?
No, I was trying to mute somebody that was creaking. I apologize. Go ahead. You stopped at demonic. So.
No, he told me that my love of labyrinths was demonic, and I didn't know how to answer him. And so then the Archbishop of Calgary, who was so kind, he came over and kind of stopped the guy from yelling at me. Anyway, because I had built a labyrinth prayer walk in my own yard, you know, and
for you that was meaningful.
Yeah, and I use it to pray, but it goes to show you how, what you were just saying, Carrie, how some people's spiritual practices are not, other people might not be comfortable with them, you know. So you've got to do what you feel like God is calling you to do, and what like, you know, the whole question, what gives you joy and what gives your life meaning and what really sustains you, you know, because during the pandemic, I mean, I was a Lenten speaker for St. Michael's of Colorado Springs weeks ago, and it's on my Facebook, and it was hard for me. I shared my story of walking with my daughter right now, who is suffering from severe depression, and it's why I'm down here in Texas right now. And she's 37. She's beautiful. Her name is Laura, and I ask you all to pray for her. So that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it was hard for me to share and be vulnerable and share that story. But what I did, I shared in this Lenten talk, you know, what the things are right now that sustain me on a daily basis as I do this really, really hard work with my daughter. And because of COVID, it's the one gift of COVID that I can do Invite, Welcome, Connect from right here in Beaumont, Texas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to do now, is everybody back, Gar?
I think so. Yep.
So what we want to do now is I hope that I know this is just really this has been last week and this week really has been a very, very brief kind of deep dive into this ministry. And so I really encourage you to take the time, if you would, to really explore the website. There are a tremendous number of videos that go all the way back to me. I think there should be a video in our archive of me giving the keynote address back in the Diocese of North Carolina when Bishop Curry asked me to do that. And that keynote address, the overview and where I'm unpacking Invite, was the reason that, you know, Kevin Brown, when he became Bishop of Delaware, said because of that one keynote address, he started implementing this ministry in his church, and it made all the difference in his church. And so there's some rich videos and information that go back, you know, the last 5 or 6 or 7 years with this ministry that are on the website if people just kind of take the time to look at them and to really dig deep into them. You know, there's a lot there. But we want to have a little bit of a Q&A right now. There, you know, you can ask me anything you want to ask me. I may not be able to answer it, but if I can't answer it, maybe Gar can. So just unmute yourself and raise your hand and let Gar call on you. And we'll just have a little conversation.
When you raise your hand, make sure to move it a little bit, because I'm looking at 50 screens. So Anybody want to ask a question?
Nobody has any questions. This is okay.
You just gotta wait a little. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's go with Alice.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. This has really, really been very enlightening for me. We just haven't done anything like this. It's just nice to be connecting again with people from other parishes. And I've enjoyed it very much.
Well, thank you. And thank Gar for that. He's the one that pulled it all together.
I'll ask a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you talking to me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Talking with some people who have joined the church over the last few years, got very different responses. One who said that had we come up to her and talked about, all the different things she can get involved in and things, even after 2 or 3 visits, she would have been overwhelmed. She was an introvert. She is an introvert. And another person who was talking about wanting to get involved more quickly. How do you suggest reading people so that you don't overwhelm them? And especially choosing people to be on a welcoming committee or something like that. I mean, people need to have some people skills to do that.
Thank you for that question. I address some of that in my book. I address those people that are introverts, but I also say that it's really, really critical that you have part of your welcome team is a mix, that you have the introverts. A lot of times introverts make the best greeters because they are introverts and they don't want to be overwhelmed. We don't want people, just jumping on people when they come to church, especially when we start going back into in-person worship. Mm-hmm. But thank you for the question. It's a fine line, and I'm right on the middle on the Myers-Briggs between extrovert and introvert. And so I really get that. But my daughter that I'm walking alongside right now is very, very much an introvert. And so I'm learning a lot myself right now. So I think it's just, it's a ministry of just discerning and helping people discern. And if you have people that are really big time extroverts, what you have to do is, and it comes up to the clergy need to help people that are overpowering to kind of pull them back in and give them a little bit of, love, and tell them that and share with them how that might be an affront to the people that really are introverts. Mm-hmm.
One thing we do is just to say out loud, you may need to just be in worship, and that may be all that you want right now, and all you can do. You just need to tell us that, or you can tell me or one of the team members. We say that at several points in our process to just let people know, you don't have to jump in. It's there if you want to, but you can also maybe, and we've had some people who've come and they've either been burned out at their last congregation, or they're just in a place in life and they've just said, I just need to go to church and I need to be fed right now. And you just kind of have to hang out and they may not leave that spot, but more often than not, after a while, they decide to start doing a little bit. It's also a way to kind of think about it, is just saying that out loud, that there's permission to be not super engaged if they need time. So.
Yeah.
Did Kathy? Is that Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. I just wanted to add on to what Gar was saying about, or what you were saying rather, about you may need to have a clergy member say something. The truth is that, speak the truth in love. Somebody's, I have to be really careful, and I've learned to be better about it for myself, but other people have in the past needed to give me a hand, saying, whoa, back up, just, relax a little bit. And just to do it lovingly. You don't have to have your clergy watching vigilantly. You can have one another just committed to lovingly, keeping an eye on each other and ourselves. I just wanted to throw just just to remind us that you know, we're all in this together.
Yeah, that's true. It's one of those core values, you know, the one about accountable. So it is. It's kind of keeping each other accountable to honoring each other's boundaries, especially. Anyone else?
Yeah, Kate, go ahead.
Mary, you dropped this on us just before we went into a small group meeting. Could you talk a little bit about friendly community versus community of friends?
Yeah, I've used that for a long time. Do you see yourself as a friendly community, or do you see yourself as a community of friends? And I use that as a and that example that I gave of kind of, you know, going into, because it has happened so many times over the last 10 years or so that I've been doing this ministry. You know, you go into a room of people and you're a visitor for the first time. And this even happened to me. And people aren't coming over and speaking to you, or they're not saying anything to you. And so it's either, you know, we've got to really look at it because that's what you are then. You're just a community of friends, and you're not willing to step outside your bounds and you step outside of your comfort zone and going over and introducing yourself to someone that you don't know. So it's been one of those questions that I have used for a long time, because I think it makes people realize that, of course, we want to have a community of friends, but at the same time, we want to be a friendly community. But you have to be very intentional to make it both. Thank you for asking me, though.
One thing to think about too is if you're involved in outreach, you know, the people that you are reaching out to might also be looking for a church home, and there are often, through relational ways, to gently invite them or be open to what they might be seeking. We house homeless people sometimes at St. Thomas through a network, and we've done a couple of baptisms. We've had people get involved, and just being open to that conversation and knowing that they're, you know, it's not been that they've approached me, they've approached our lay people who know that if someone's eager for something like that, that we'll respond. So it's something to think about. If you're involved in a neighborhood ministry, or you're doing other stuff, a lot of those folks might be looking for a place to belong. Being open to that. Any other questions? I'm just looking. I'm trying to watch everybody. It's hard to do.
John Desk was raising.
Hey, John, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question, and it's somewhat like the following. I think what people are interested in doing here is getting people in the pew, and this can be in the general sense to get people in a pew in a church, and in a more specific sense in getting people in a particular pew in my church. I wondered how you compare and contrast these two efforts, and I see it being more important as with when I can get on Zoom and, as I've done, follow noonday prayer for a church down in New Orleans, and vice versa. So,
what is your specific question? I guess I'm just.
It's a question that kind of blurs into a statement. I think we want to get people into our own local church here in town, but we also, as Christians, want people to find a church that is a good fit for them.
Right.
Right.
Okay. I understand what you're saying now. Yeah. So, you know, when I became Episcopalian, my family just were horrified. They really were. I grew up Southern Baptist, and it was for me, it was sort of a call to ministry. And then I was invited to the Episcopal Church, and, you know, I had to kind of explain to them over the years. They really get it now why. But I also believe that I think the Episcopal Church is the best kept secret. And so it's, for me personally, it's the place that I have felt welcomed and affirmed and seen and loved. It's a place where I have found a place for my ministry. But at the same time, just like you just said, the deep sense that I want other people to know Jesus like I know Jesus. And if your call is to become Methodist, like Mary Ellen, this friend of mine, who I'm at her house right now, is an active person, member of Trinity Methodist here in Beaumont. Excuse me. So yeah, John, it's, you know, we are called to carry the light of Christ wherever we go. And I think, you know, we're also called to help people discern where they find love and joy and fellowship and community. So I hope that answers your question.
Other questions? John, another way to think about it too is having a digital or a threshold. Like the threshold to join the church right now is lower than it's probably ever been, because you can just hop onto a digital expression at your home and watch. And while that's not the traditional way that a lot of us understood how you join a church, they're crossing a threshold, if that makes sense. And it might be that you're sort of encouraging them to come in. And I think it's always sort of both and. I've been surprised at some of our members who have said they're watching every week. And I had one person who was sort of an edge, just sort of part of the church and came every once in a while, said they've never attended church more in their life. And it's all been digital. And so I wouldn't want to take that away from them, because they're certainly part of our community. They'll still come in the pew and they'll still come sit in the church sometimes, but it just means they can engage with you in a little bit easier way. And it's just sort of, it's a little different than what we used to do. So that's for sure, but it's a way to kind of think about it. And
I have one story to tell, since John, you know, made me really think about this. And I really only told this story sort of to some small groups. So of course this is going to be recorded, but I talk about, in my book, I talk about being married to someone for 20 years, and I was Southern Baptist, went through a divorce. Well, he wound up marrying someone else. And so I, Southern Baptist, and I became Episcopalian, right? Well, the woman he married was Episcopalian at St. Mark's, and she became Southern Baptist. And I tell people, you know, I feel like I got the better end of the deal, but also God has a sense of humor. And it was just like, we just kind of flip-flopped because she found God in the Southern Baptist Church. I found God in the Episcopal Church, you know, so it's anyway. So y'all get a little piece, a little nugget of my personal story that I don't really tell. And I sure didn't put that in the book. So
we're a little over time and we want to be respectful. So I'm so grateful to Mary for her time with us the last couple of weeks. And I know this is not as much as we would be able to do if we were all able to go to a conference. So I also want to thank all of you for participating. I'm going to try to, let me make sure there's something in the chat. Yeah. I'm going to try to offer over the next several months a couple of opportunities for us to gather again, whoever wants to from your parishes, to talk about this and more in depth. We'll do a session on invite, we'll do a section on welcome, and one on connect. We'll dive a little deeper in, and the idea is for us to share as a community what we're discovering and what we're thinking about doing, or because I think we can all learn from each other. There's no right way to do any of this. There's just trying stuff and seeing what works. And it's great to hear other people's ideas. There's no copyrights. There's no, there's nothing like that. And so if you're interested in that, just watch for an email from me. I'll send the video out from tonight, hopefully first thing tomorrow. If I have time, I'll get it done tonight. And I just, so we can get it out and get it out there, share it with anybody you want to. The links will be on our, when I say our, St. Thomas's, it'll be on our YouTube channel and easy to get there. And I'll send you the links in email just so you have them. And again, I want to thank all of you. It's great to see so many of you from all over the diocese and some people I haven't seen for a long time, and just great to have these resources. Thanks to John, my co-chair, John Hollinger up at Trinity, for his help. And Mary, you got any final words, and we'll pray our way out?
No, I just really, we each one of us has a need to be seen and heard and welcomed and affirmed. And so I just believe that this ministry gives Episcopalians hope, and we all need hope these days. So God bless you all. And I've thoroughly enjoyed being with you. And maybe one of these days I can be with you in person. So
yeah. Well, as soon as we can, we're going to get her in the diocese for an in-person conference. So I'm there's a great old spiritual called Give Me Jesus. So we're going to pray our way out together in song. So the way that works on Zoom is you sing at home on mute. Because if we all try to sing together, it garbles because there's a slight delay for each of us. So, but it will all sound great. And it'll look like we're just having a great time together. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is a great old spiritual. And we'll just the words will be up on the screen. You can sing if you want to. It also fits the lessons for this Sunday. So if you haven't read the lessons, it's when the Greeks come and say, "Sir, we would see Jesus." So give me just a second. Let's hear it.
In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you may have all this world, give me Jesus. Dark midnight was my cry, dark midnight was my cry, dark midnight was my cry, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you may have all this world, give me Jesus. Oh, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you may have all this world, give me Jesus.
So that's a great old hymn. I just thought that was kind of fitting to what Mary was saying, and also for our lessons this week. So it's great to see everybody. Look for some emails from me in the next couple of days, hopefully first thing tomorrow, and look for some information about when we might try to gather again. I'll try to offer 2 or 3 different opportunities so people who want to can have a conversation. I'll probably ask you to register again just so we kind of know who's going to come. So again, you guys, thanks. Have a good night. And the bishop says hello. She's been busy with House of Bishops, so she couldn't be here tonight, but this is all on behalf of her. So thanks to the bishop.
Thank you, Garl and Mary.
Thank you.
Mary, thanks so much. Y'all take care.